Do you own or rent your home? Sure you do, and I'll bet it can be hard work. You know what's easy? Bundling policies with Geico. Geico makes it easy to bundle your homeowner's or renter's insurance along with your auto policy. It's a good thing, too, because you already have so much to do around your home. Go to geico.com, get a quote, and see how much you could save. It's Geico Easy. Visit geico.com today. That's geico.com.
What are you hoping the Vice President can do with the border tomorrow?
He's done a great job so far, and the reason why it's important that she go down, she has now set up the criteria, having spoken with the President of Mexico and Guatemala, visited the region to know what we need to do.
She has not set the criteria to know what we need to do, is what he thinks he said there. No one else is entirely sure. And then he had this Whisperin' Smith thing yesterday. You see this very bizarre behavior once again by the doddering President of the United States, the dim-witted Joe Biden. And sure enough, he's talking about Kamala. It's a comma like the punctuation mark and la like la. Kamala. Kamala is getting on a big old jet airliner, a U.S. Air Force 757 with the 89th Airlift Wing at Joint Base Andrews outside of Washington, D.C., where many great people work. She's going to fly down to not the Rio Grande Valley. She's going to the northernmost point on the U.S. border with Mexico that you can find in Texas. And therefore, see, if you're sneaking into the country from Central America or from any place, you're going to go, of course, to the southernmost point because you're walking and you're riding the rails, and it's it's like hobo land, and you got a stick over your shoulder with a bandana folded up with everything you own in it. It's a long trip, but it's a lot longer if you walk to El Paso. A whole lot longer. I mean, hundreds of miles longer. Really, you just go down to along the Gulf of Mexico border on the eastern part of Texas, and at their border with Mexico. And that's where you come in. The least likely place that anybody's going to go is El Paso, given that it is the northernmost point in Mexico that you can enter Texas. Now, and then you got New Mexico and Arizona and California. That's a separate issue. California along the West Coast, they've got their share of activity there. But in Texas, it's the Rio Grande Valley, and not El Paso. El Paso is the slowest place going there. So she's going to fly in there on the big old 757. I've flown on those airplanes in the past with cabinet secretaries, not for quite some time, but still the same airplanes. And they, they're going to fly in. I guess they're probably going to fly into Biggs Field, a military base there, rather than at El Paso International Airport. But who knows what they will choose. They're going to fly into one of those. Those two airstrips basically surround a U.S. Army base. They're called Fort Bliss. And Fort Bliss, which is not necessarily the most desirable place to be assigned. Fort Bliss, it's kind of fun, though. Fort Bliss is home right now to a tent city that houses hundreds of millions of migrant children that are making Nike shoes and having to row the boat like slaves in the Roman days. And the hundreds, is it thousands? There are millions, I think, of kids. Really, there are thousands of kids in U.S. custody, unaccompanied minors that have been thrown over walls at our border and so on. And Fort Bliss is home. The news media can't get in there. Well, they haven't asked, I don't think. But the Biden administration is not allowing any press into this tent city where the children, according to all reports, and I mean CBS News did a piece about a week ago, at least on the internet, talking about all the terrible things going on there and how awful it is for the children at this tent city. And there are so many of them, and I'm going to share the details with you on this. And I want to share this with you, and there have been stories, I've talked about the stories in the past, with the sex abuse going on there. Unaccompanied minor means up to 17 years old. One day before you turn 18, some of them doubtless are over 18. Some of them are probably over 20 because, you don't have IDs and you don't really know how old these people are. and stuff, but there's sexual abuse going on there of girls and boys by other of the children, the minors, the unaccompanied minors, and apparently by some employees as well, government employees that are attending, according to news reports. And so there's this, all these children there in the tent city, and the sexual abuse going on, and the depression, and children are trying to hurt themselves, and they had to take away all sharp implements, including pencils and toothbrushes. They had to take, because they're like sharpening them up like it's West Side Story in prison, and stabbing each other or something, or stabbing themselves. So the place is really a horror show, according to news reports. And I just want to point this out because that's right where Kamala Harris is landing. She's landing there to avoid the controversy of the Rio Grande Valley sector and everything that's going on there, going to the least controversial sector. But little did she know, right there is Fort Bliss, where all these children are being held in this camp, this detention camp. You know, like when FDR threw all the Japanese Americans in detention camps. It's kind of like that. It's on a military base, and the press can't get there because it's a military base. You can't just sashay onto Fort Bliss. Can't just saunter on there. Not since the troglodyte attacks of September 11th, 2001. You can't, to the radical Islamic jihadi troglodyte attacks from hell. But all the kids are in there in this tent city. And Kamala will not be going there, apparently. She will apparently not be visiting there because some press might have to come along or something, and they don't want to show what's going on there. They don't want to show the world. They don't want to show the American people what's going on there. But I will share with you what's going on there and what she's not, presumably, apparently, reportedly, what she's not going to visit today. Because, she's her, don't you know she is? And she's really not up to the job, not by a long shot. That's for sure. So that's one of the big stories going on today. Joe Biden and the Washington Post are celebrating a great victory, but it's a fictitious victory. It hasn't actually happened. The front page of the Washington Post today, Biden claims victory on deal. The deal, nothing has been signed, nothing has gone through. Tough path ahead on infrastructure. President ties approval to safety net measures. Safety net measures. That means trillions more in redistribution of wealth to Democrat allies in corrupt cities across America. Otherwise, they're not going to give you the first bill, which Biden is already being given credit for. On the front page, lead story. Above the fold, upper right corner, President Biden signed off Thursday on a bipartisan agreement that would pump hundreds of billions of dollars in new spending into infrastructure projects across the country. See, the Republicans are perfectly happy to spend hundreds of billions of dollars on actual infrastructure projects that have to do with bridges and things like that. But then the Democrats it's a Christmas tree bill. They put every corrupt billion trillion dollar thing in there and said now vote for it, daring you to vote for it. Then they use it against you in campaign ads if you actually did vote for it, because only an idiot would vote for it. It's a corrupt city filled with corrupt people. So the thing, and this the Washington Post says, infrastructure projects across the country, handing him, if it passes congressional muster, which it won't, a significant cross-party achievement and a top goal of his administration. See, they're hail the conquering hero. Nothing has happened here, but Biden immediately pledged to abandon the compromise if Democrats on Capitol Hill do not simultaneously send him a sweeping package. They like the word sweeping with Biden, of Democratic spending priorities, so opposed by most Republicans, to shore up the nation's social safety net. So a giant expansion of socialism comes as part and parcel of the infrastructure bill. Otherwise, you get neither. So what they've done is they've broken it up into two parts, but then Biden says, unless we get two parts, we don't get either part. So it might as well be the same bill. But the difference is that the fluffers at the Washington Post, Sun Min Kim and Mike DeBonis, and Jeff Stein, they're Democrats all from the steno pool down at the DNC, and they typed up this press release about the hero Biden, even though nothing actually happened. It's just a complete joke. The whole thing is just an obscene joke. and because they want trillions, literally more, in social programs. It's expanding the welfare state, because the more people there are in welfare, the better it is for the Democratic Party on Election Day. That's the deal. The more people there are working that have dignity and pride, the better it is for Republicans on Election Day. See how different that is. It's very different indeed. So we'll get into that a bit too. There are a lot of other things going on as well. That's a great big fraud. Kamala Harris, did you see the weirdness? First of all, Joe Biden was behaving very strangely yesterday with his Whispering Smith campaign. It's an old movie, Whispering Smith, and he was behaving very, very strangely. Then Kamala Harris was behaving very, very strangely, kind of lurking behind a pillar at the entrance to the West Wing of the White House, while Joe Biden and Democrat senators were holding a press conference about nothing, about the thing that didn't happen, and but being treated as conquering heroes by the phony, corrupt White House press corps. You know, the usual stuff. It was another day in Washington. And Kamala was, we used to say when I was a kid, hunching. She was hunching. We would call her a huncher, because she was like the Hunchback of Notre Dame, like sort of skulking. Skulking is a good word, too. She was not part of the group of Democrat senators and Mitt Romney. And then there were a couple of Republicans. And because it was bipartisan, this phony thing. And she was behind a pillar, a column at the entrance where the Marines stand if the president is in the Oval Office, the entrance to the West Wing. And that's where the press wing is, close to where the press wing is as well, the press room. And she was lurking, skulking, hunching behind a column and not being a part of the in crowd, because she's a weirdo too. Can I just say? She's a weirdo too, and her behavior, I only say that because she behaves in such a weird way. She was skulking back there, but we'll get into that. And Biden's Creepy Joe trends on Twitter after Biden continually whispers through press conference in a very strange way. And he's being asked, well, employers and small businesses in particular can't get people to come work for them because you're sending so much money that that they're going to stay home and smoke crack like your son Hunter. That's the question I would have asked. It's not the question that was asked. And then he got really weird and started whispering like a freak. And he said that means that everybody has to pay more. So employers now, small business owners, are going to have to pay employees more because the Biden socialist government is paying people so much money to not work, paying people so much money to stay home. Just amazing. Yeah, it's an amazing thing. We also have this incredible kind of story out of the third world coming from the Miami area and Surfside. It's on the peninsula there of Miami Beach and all those beautiful places along the Atlantic Ocean there. Surfside in Miami, this 12-story building that collapsed. And now it's gotten even worse. Now, until early this morning, they were saying they had only one confirmed person killed, and now they have 4 people confirmed killed. They're saying that they have they had 99 people unaccounted for, and now the number has grown and is significantly larger. 159 people are now classified as missing, unaccounted for, and it is really something. I mean, the mayor of Surfside down there, it's an independent town, said it himself. He said this is the stuff of the third world. You don't see this in the United States of America. And I keep talking about all the signs that we're becoming a third world country. This is another sign because the left. And why? Well, because of the left, and the Democrat Party is the left. And this is another indicator that we are more and more becoming a third world country. There is a reporter in Miami that's been reporting for quite some time, for years now, on the corruption that is rampant, apparently, in the building inspecting process in Miami-Dade County, and how it has been a scandal for quite some time. Corruption, you pay people off, you know how corruption works. And they're Democrats, and they show up and they get an envelope full of money, and then you pass your inspection, your building inspection, even though you shouldn't have. Can't say that's the case when it comes to this building specifically. They're talking about a lot of different possibilities. The rebar being laid improperly in the concrete. That would go back to inspections when the building was built some 40 years ago. The sea air, the salt air eroding metal like rebar in the concrete and so on. So an investigation will take place. But now, according to the Wall Street Journal this morning, 159 people classified as missing, 4 confirmed dead. Also, you've got at least 20 people from Israel, at least 24 people from South America living in that building or owning places in that building, including the president of Paraguay or Paraguay in South America. The First Lady's sister is among the missing in the building there. And now we have to apologize to Latin American countries for being too third world, and to Israelis. Apparently 10 of the Israelis belong to one synagogue close to the building. And this is a calamity, the likes of which we don't see in the United States of America. At least, well, we can't say that anymore. We never saw these kinds of things in the United States of America until now. It's the third worlding of America. Thanks, Democrats. Also, we got Joe Biden and Latinx. He said Latinx or something like it yesterday, kind of like James Carville. We've got that for you. And Kamala Harris ignoring the plight of suffering children when she visits the least active part of the U.S.-Mexico border today for a photo op. And the media will praise her again like she's a conquering hero.
There's only one Chris Plant. The Chris Plant Show.
Do you own or rent your home? Sure you do, and I'll bet it can be hard work. You know what's easy? Bundling policies with Geico. Geico makes it easy to bundle your homeowner's or renter's insurance along with your auto policy. It's a good thing, too, because you already have so much to do around your home. Go to geico.com, get a quote, and see how much you could save. It's Geico easy. Visit geico.com today. That's geico.com.
So I want to because it's important to get the pronunciations correct, or the pronunciations. It's Latinx, like Kleenex, right? Is that right? Because we learned that, I think, from James Carville, and Joe Biden yesterday tried to utter the word. It's not a word, and that's one of the problems that they're having, is that they make up words and insert them into the vocabulary, and they're idiot, like children words, and then they burn other words. Speaking of which, the FAA is now on a tear. Yesterday I was talking about Brandeis University, and they have a new list of words that are out of bounds, words, terms, and phrases that are out of bounds at Brandeis University, and it's an embarrassment to Western civilization and to the very concept of the academy, which emerged from Germany many centuries ago, of the university. And Brandeis University humiliates themselves. Once again, I was talking about it yesterday, and I want to get into that. But the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, is now jumping into the action here with word corrections of their own. And they have they create these panels, and that's what you do if you don't get a real job in the administration. You get appointed to a panel of some kind, and then you come up with harebrained, lunatic, fringe concepts that that you heard about in a faculty lounge, and you bring them to Washington, D.C., and you share your crazy with everybody. And because the Democrats are in charge, the entire federal government says, yes, we must never say cockpit again. And it's, I'm not making this up. I'm telling the truth. The FAA is getting in on the PC woke word burning action. They don't burn the entire book anymore. Now they burn, well, you know, a page at a time, a paragraph, a phrase, a word at a time. That's coming right up.
This is the Chris Plant Show.
I'm telling you, these people. I had, you know, on the laptop, you get these pop-up ads. It's an iPad in my case. You get these pop-up, they're not ads, news stories like Apple News or something like that every morning. And CNN has this really lame thing. It's a Democrat Party press release that they spit out every morning. It's corrupt from start to finish. And it says that there is something about the upsurge in Delta Plus cases. And I sort of chuckled when I saw it. Delta Plus, what are you people talking about? And it turns out that the Delta Plus is now not only a category when you're flying Delta Airlines, but it is a new version of the Delta coronavirus variant spreading in countries, including the United Kingdom. You know, they stripped away. We had the UK strain and the South Africa strain, but they wanted everybody to stop saying Wuhan and to stop saying China because the communists have a great deal of sway in Western industry and in media organizations. And so in an effort to get everyone to stop mentioning China, which is where this virus came from, the city of Wuhan, and quite probably, at least possibly, the Wuhan Institute of Virology, according to all the smart kids now, even Jon Stewart. So that means Democrats have to listen because that's where they got their news for a couple of decades, which explains a lot when you come right down to it. But the Delta, the new CNN going on about the Delta Plus variant. And I'm just thinking about standing in line to board a flight at an airport when you're flying Delta, and they have, you know, families with children for pre-boarding and then active duty members of the military, you know, for pre-board. And then, of course, Delta Plus passengers. And they should have another variant if this thing changes again. They should make it the Delta Premier variant so that they've got all kinds of – you're not going to want to get on a Delta flight anymore. The way they're going, Delta should sue. Delta Airlines should sue these numbskulls. And their reason for doing it was utterly corrupt and pro-communist Chinese party because they quake in their moccasins in fear at what the Chinese communists may do, I guess. But that just kind of made me laugh. The Delta coronavirus variant spreading countries, including wink, wink, the United Kingdom. Just don't call it that anymore. And in India, it may have started in India, this variant, and then gone to the UK and then come to us. But the whole thing started in a city called Wuhan, China, where, as Jon Stewart pointed out, they've got the Wuhan, China Institute of Virology, in particular, bat-based coronavirus. And, you know, when even he is forced, I got to tell you, it really is a daily case of the emperor's new clothes. And if you tell the truth, it's, you know, everyone gasps in shock. It's really all of this, the whole lefty thing, is explained by children's stories and by fairy tales all over the place. But I digress. Let's get back to the FAA because they're so woke. They're so woke they can hardly stand it. Yesterday I was making fun of the Brandeis University new, you know, the speech crimes list. And you can't say picnic because of a fake story. It's like an urban legend that, oh, the word picnic comes from lynchings. No, it doesn't. People would eat during lynchings. No, they wouldn't. And lynchings were spontaneous. You know, when they had hangings of murderers and cattle rustlers and horse thieves out west, they would schedule those, and people would bring the family and watch, and maybe they'd have a little something to eat because, living was rough back then, and you didn't have all kinds of handy takeout foods. So, McDonald's wasn't around the corner, so you'd bring your food and stuff. Got to feed the kids, strong back and all that. But Brandeis yesterday, we came out and we were making fun of these people yesterday because it's impossible to not mock. You can't use picnic or rule of thumb. Rule of thumb, everybody knows the history of rule of thumb. There was a law in merry old England centuries ago that you could beat your wife like the Democrats, but you couldn't use a stick that was bigger around than your thumb. So that's the rule of thumb. And they said that terms like this are oppressive. You can't use African American anymore. Can't use African American anymore. They said you got to use black, and you got to capitalize it when you do. And you can't use trigger warning because the word trigger warning might trigger people because guns have triggers, and they're in a very delicate and fragile mental state, the average Democrat. It's remarkable stuff because these words reinforce systems of oppression, except they don't unless you're really severely mentally ill, as so many millions of them apparently are. Potentially oppressive language, they said, and they had this group, the Prevention Advocacy and Resource Center, which doesn't mean anything, except they then turn it into an acronym, which is PARK. Yeah, they should park on the side of the road and, run a hose from the... No, they shouldn't. From the exhaust pipe to the window. No, they shouldn't. They shouldn't do that. And you can't use, gender-exclusive language, congressmen and policemen and stuff like that. Can't use that. And you can't say a walk-in, like a business has a walk-in, because that's ableist. Ableist meaning not everybody can walk, so you can't make reference to anything that might. It's just amazing stuff. They got to get rid of ableist and gender-exclusive and culturally appropriative terminology that can get in the way of meaningful dialogue. You can't have meaningful dialogue with people that are very severely mentally ill, and that's really the problem that we've got here. And this is all the PARK, they call themselves PARK. This is a response to anti-blackness, which the Democrat Party has been guilty of for a couple of centuries now, I guess, century and a half and more, that's for sure. Remarkable stuff. So this is Brandeis University. And you can't say African American. They canceled African American. This is, and just keeping up with the changes in terminology. I think we're going to have an app for that. You guys should have an app for all the words that you ban on any given day, words, terms, phrases that you ban, because they're word burners. They're word burners from way back. And these recommendations for more neutral language are brought forth by students who have been indoctrinated, brainwashed, drugged, and they have glassy eyes and have been subject to violence. No, they haven't. Or who have worked with others who are healing from violence. Well, you guys should stop the violence. Let's start with that, okay? As well as students who have sought out advanced training in intervening in potentially violent situations. That really has nothing to do with anything, but, that's okay. You guys should stop the violence, and you should stop shooting people. Can you do that, please? Maybe it'd be like Death Takes a Holiday. Take a month off from shooting people, and, this is remarkable stuff. And it's completely ridiculous, of course. It's embarrassing to the United States of America, to Western civilization, to all normal people with a minimum of 2 brain cells to rub together. And honestly, it is Congresswoman Elise Stefanik. Can you call her Congresswoman, or is that gendered? So, who's co-sponsoring a bill called Campus Free Speech and Restoration Act. I bet that becomes an acronym, too. Let's see, CFSRA. Maybe not. That'd be nice if it were not reduced to an acronym, because they create all these bills. They name the bills they start with an acronym, and then they find some excuse to break it down into the words that they're looking. And she's talking about our First Amendment, God forbid. And this is Brandeis thing is another example of the far left cancel culture happening in our schools. Yeah, but it's not the 1619 Project or critical race theory. Yeah, it basically is. So she's talking about the far left's radical overhaul of education being un-American. They push these so-called safe spaces to eliminate diversity of thought, critical thinking, and intellectual curiosity, and replace all of that with socialist brainwashing, groupthink, and Marxist ideology like critical race theory. She said, see, she's great, Elise Stefanik, and that's why the media hates her. And they hate her. The media, they represent the Democrat Party and the left. And they hate pretty much everybody. And they hate each other, too. It's kind of like Europe. In Europe, they all hate each other. The Italians hate the French, and the French hate the English, and everybody hates the Germans. It's kind of a variation on the old Everybody Hates the Jews song, but we'll get back to that another time. So with that, we talked about that yesterday, and just completely ridiculous. Somebody points out that the school's named for Louis Brandeis, one of the first Jewish Supreme Court justices, and saying that he, Justice Brandeis, would be appalled by what's taking place on the campus that is named for him. And certainly right. It's a $60,000 a year school. Room and board is another $16,450. So really that's $77,000 a year to go to Brandeis so that your snowflake child can come home brainwashed, glassy-eyed, and insane, looking forward to sleeping in parks and burning police cars. Speaking of which, in Portland, the liberals were attacking the police again. Another ridiculous story. A crazy person with a big screwdriver was attacking the police, and as you might expect, one of the police officers shot and killed the lunatic. And so liberals, white, glassy-eyed people who don't know what Western grooming habits are about, came out in force and attacked the police and vandalized police cars and violently attacked the police and all this stuff, because that's what they do. And the police don't react much because the Democrats run the place in Portland, and they'll lynch the police officers if they, arrest any of the precious little children who are violently attacking as part of a mob the police again for the 100 and whatever time in the last year. But then the police tweeted out, because they wanted to put an end to it, they tweeted out that the guy they shot to death was white. And then all the rioters said, oh, okay, and they went home. Because they're racists, you see. Now the dumpkins at the Federal Aviation Administration are getting in on the action. And this is kind of an amazing story. Woke FAA wants to shift gears from, quote, cockpit, end quote, airman, end quote, to flight deck and aviator. You see, and then the headline says, here's why. Well, we know why. We don't have to have it explained. But there it is. They have an advisory group, and this is, Biden people. They because they didn't have real jobs for them in the government. They're probably donors or something. Then they get to say they're on an advisory board with the Biden administration for the Federal Aviation Administration. And then naturally they have to come up with a report. And now their report is up. And here are their big ideas. Here's the big thinking from these guys. The Federal Aviation Administration wants to have more, the panel, more gender-neutral terms, you see. The news comes after advisory group offered a report on the switch to more neutral terms, saying it can lead to a more inclusive environment. It's inclusive. They love that word, inclusive. They don't know what it means, but they like to use it a lot. It's like diversity. They use that word a lot, too, and they don't know what it means. And it draws more people into the industry to help keep them there. And you see, you got to do, it's the switch to gender-neutral terms. Some are calling wokeness. Not without controversy, you see. It's like the U.S. Army canceling its gender-neutral fitness test after women were reportedly failing in large numbers. So now the men take the women's fitness test, and now everybody passes. It's much better that way. Of course, we're going to have our hat handed to us by the Chinese communists and the Russians when the day comes, and the Islamists and everybody else, but never mind that. So, this is what they do. Even Hasbro announced that Mr. Potato Head was going gender neutral. I never really noticed the genitals on Mr. Potato Head, but I guess they called him Mr. Potato Head. So they got this stuff going on all over the place. And the FAA, you see, the advisory group, they want to stop using, I'm not making, I sound like I'm telling off-color jokes or something, but I'm not. They say the word cockpit is offensive and that sometimes the boys use the word to embarrass the women or to tell them that they can't come into the cockpit. So they're going to start calling it the flight deck, which doubtless next year they will decide is offensive for another reason. And you can't have airmen. I didn't know that the FAA used airmen except when talking about the Air Force. But there it is. And they want to do away with all of these terms because, liberals might be offended, I think, is the thing. If you travel frequently, watch a lot of films, chances are you've heard terms like cockpit and airman. Well, will soon be out, as the Federal Aviation Administration may move to replace those terms with more gender-neutral terms. It's a technician, a repairman, airman. They're going to replace it with aviator, right? And wife, they're not going to use wife anymore. The FAA won't use wife. They'll use spouse, you see. Well, wife is more specific, I think, but you can become less specific if you think that's going to be helpful. And this is the Federal Aviation Administration under the Biden administration. This is where we are as a country and as a culture because, mentally impaired people are running a great deal of the show. And that's kind of a thing, I've got to say. It really is. All right, let's, Michael, lots of crazy stuff, and Joe Biden to get to. He's part of the crazy stuff. And Kamala, she doesn't care about children. Right now, let's go to the phones, and let's do it anyway. Let's go to Mark calling from Reston, Virginia. Mark, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Thank you for all you do. So Brandeis University, that's just another university that my kids won't be going to. There's a lot on that list, apparently.
Yeah, it's a long list, yeah.
Yeah, but so my father's uncle was a building inspector in Miami in the late 40s and 50s, and it was well known within the family that he was constantly awash in cash and lived a rather extravagant lifestyle given what he was doing. So it was all on the down low, and everybody knew that he was working with mafia types and obviously kind of looking the other way related to whatever regulation he was supposed to be enforcing. But I'm kind of surprised that something like this hadn't happened a lot earlier than this year, given
because it's part of your family lore. I won't ask if you're Italian, but it's no, it's okay. It's honestly the construction business, the concrete business, the steel business, and then of course the permitting business. And I did mention earlier, you probably heard me mention, there's a reporter in Miami that's written about this extensively and has it in his books and about apparently it's a notorious problem down there, right?
Yeah, that was certainly the case and understood within our family.
Wow. Yeah, and mafia. New York, Miami, concrete, construction, steel business. Then, of course, you got to get the inspectors in on the action. And apparently it's well known in your family, well known at least to certain newspapers and reporters and authors in Miami, Florida. And now a building collapses. That'll be part of the investigation. They're not all doing it. They're saying that the soil was shifting or sinking beneath this building for some years. There was an inspector there on the roof the day before the collapse, hours before the collapse of the building. But this is going to become a major issue. And Mark, I bet money right now this will change the way things are done in Florida and probably beyond, because this is a sign, yet another sign, that we're becoming just another third world country. Thanks, Mark.
You're listening to The Chris Plant Show.
There's been a little problem in the cockpit.
The cockpit? What is it?
It's the little room in the front of the plane where the pilots sit. That's not important right now.
Texting with my friend Rob, and he points out, the origin of the word cockpit predates the airplane. Goes back to the British Royal Navy centuries ago. The word cockpit originally was the term for the area on the ship where the coxswain would sit, the coxswain station. You still have on row, crew boats, college crew and stuff, the coxswain. It's, it makes the kids giggle. You talk about the coxswain. And, from the cockpit, the coxswain ordered the seaman to hand the sextant to the, we're going to have to ban a lot of words because all of these things could be gendered or, could trigger people. Oh, you can't use trigger anymore because trigger is on a gun. So we're going to get rid of all these words. They're the word burners from way back. They certainly are. So, it doesn't actually have anything to do with the various things, although there was a lot of buggery in the British Navy. Just ask Winston Churchill, among others. One of the many things they're famous for, spices, going to far-flung places, and, of course, buggery. That's the British for you. It's an island nation. It gets lonely. The weather is often not very nice.